Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We love having you here, and it's our mission to bring you all the latest and greatest tips, skills, and know-how to make you the best that you can be. We know that you have it in you, and we're going to show you how. Now, let's get started.
This episode is powered by Poddex.
Thank you for tuning in today. You are now listening to That Will Never Work podcast with your host, Maurice Chisholm. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Hey, everyone, I have a powerful guest today, very inspirational. I can't wait to dive in and talk to you and talk about how you can achieve goals and understanding what that means and maybe even talk about community impact and things like that. So, but we'll see how the interview goes today. My special guest today has spent his career launching and developing new ventures at startups, Fortune 500s, and in academia. And Harvard Business School, he created a platform used to teach finance at prominent business schools. Works with many nonprofits, including Techie Youth and Plant a Million Corals. Here's some fun facts, too. He was a top-ranked ballroom dancer, which is very interesting. That's something that my wife and I really want to get into, and has a diverse collection of cufflinks. He is the author of the Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Has Taught You. You can find this along with great resources that will help you master these skills that will yield outsized returns for your career and your income. I want to introduce to all of you today, Mr. Mark Herschberg. Mr. Mark, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sure, no problem. Listen, I have read your information, and it really has, I have used it as a resource for some other HR individuals that are inspiring to be where you are, helping individuals get to understand what their life goals are, what makes them happy, how much money do they want to make, things like those type of questions. And I noticed that that's some important things that we sometimes we don't ask ourselves 100%, or we're not always clear. But can you explain to us why is it necessary for us to understand what our life goals are?
Absolutely. When we create a career plan, too many people just focus on, well, what's the job title I might want, or what are the mechanics of what I want to be doing? For example, do I want to be in the office 5 days a week versus being on the road? And those are important questions, but we need to fit our job, our career into our life. We don't want to create a career and then have to fit a life around that. And so in order to do that, we want to start with our life goals. We want to start with issues about our life, which does include things like income, but also where do we want to live, and when do I want to have a family, and do I want to be able to walk out of the office at 5 o'clock and say, I don't have to worry about it till 9 a.m. the next day? Mm-hmm. Or is it okay if you do have to do some work at night? Those are the questions we need to begin with before we even get to what things do I want to do at the office. So
what methods or what would you suggest for people to start asking those type of questions? Because sometimes, and I've come across a lot of people that they haven't asked those type of questions or they haven't been exposed to that, what do you think will help individuals to get to that point, to dig a little deeper, if you will?
You can start with lists, and certainly there's a list I have for free on the resources page of my website, as well as in the book. You can find other lists of career questions to ask yourself if you do a web search. But equally important is to go and talk to other people. These might be people more senior than you. They might even be peers, but ask them, tell me about your career. What is it that you like, that you don't like? What do you wish you had done differently? And you might hear people saying, boy, I wish I took a lot more chances in my 20s when I didn't have a spouse and kids and a mortgage. Or you might hear people saying, I am so glad I waited until I had a spouse with an income to take this chance, because even if I wasn't getting paid, hey, my wife was making money and we could balance with that. So you're going to hear different stories. You're going to hear different pitfalls, different successes, and that's going to help you think about what questions you should ask and what your answers are.
So in making that type of decision, because one of the things that's in your questionnaire, and you can find it on the website, and we'll get to that a little later, one of the questions are, what hobbies do I wish to support? And is that a real important question? Do you think that's a forgotten question? What's your thoughts on that type of question?
It depends. Of course, all the questions here aren't equally important to everyone.
Right.
But there's an example I give in the book. I know a guy from the ballroom dance world, and he had a job which wasn't one he loved, but it paid him enough money, and it gave him flexibility. On weekends, when we have competitions, he didn't ever have to worry about working on weekends. He also had a job where if he needed to take off, this is before remote work was a little more common, if he needed to take off at 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon so he could drive off to some competition 5 hours away that begins that night, he could do it. Really, his primary goal was his dancing, and the job was just a way to support that. Now, that's not true for everyone. Someone else might say, yeah, my hobby is fishing, and as long as I can go fishing on Sunday afternoons, I'm good. It doesn't really impact my career choices. But these are the things you have to ask, even if you say, doesn't matter, or here's the answer, but has no impact.
Okay. And I think most people, as you stated, this hobby piece may not be so important. But, it's, the way I look at it is just sometimes the little things you don't understand how much of an impact it really has on your life. And that's the reason why I asked that type of question. Because I know for myself, I love toys. I grew up in the 80s. I love Transformers. So that was something I had to make sure I put in my budget, if you will, to understand, hey, how do I fit something like that in? Creating my playroom, if you will. And I think that's something that we neglect sometimes.
Very good point. In fact, even when we think about office culture, we all have seen those pictures of the office worker or the executive who has lots of toys on the desk or in the office.
Right.
There are companies where that would be looked down upon. And if you're the type of person who likes having those fun toys on your desk, if they just make you happy, inspire you, help you think, and you're in an office culture that looks down on that, that's not going to be a good fit. And so you need to recognize that. I'll give you another example. I had a student who was fairly religious in his particular religion. And so having community service as a part of his life was very important. You can call that a hobby. You can call it a calling. We're going to use the term hobby very broadly. But it's very important that he had community impact. And so in his case, he was originally looking only at nonprofits. I said to him, yeah, that's fine. That's a valid choice. But consider as well certain organizations we see with big companies like Google or Microsoft, they will have projects that are altruistic. So we have, for example, Google's, I forget the name of it, it's whenever there's a disaster, it's what lets people say, hey, I'm safe, I'm alive, they can mark themselves where they are, family can get in touch with them. Google built this and gave it away, and if he wants to have that type of impact, he could potentially go to Google, say, I want to work on this project or else I'm not coming to Google, and he can still have that community impact even working at a for-profit company, but he needs to find a company that aligns to his values, because his values go directly to his hobbies and non-work.
And interesting you say that, because I think that also lends itself to understanding the culture of that organization. And so how would you suggest for someone to even investigate something as simple as finding out that type of culture that supports their hobbies, as you say, on a broader scale? How do you encourage someone to find that out?
It may or may not be easy. For the case of this former student of mine, he could certainly look at some of their PR, because when a company does altruistic things, they usually post about it, blog about it, tweet about it, and he can look and see what they do. But certainly during the interview process, you can ask and say, tell me about people who do this, or what's the culture like, or walk around the office and see, what do you notice? Do you notice a bunch of desks with lots of toys and fun things on it, or do you notice everyone has this very pristine, austere desk? And that's going to tell you something about the company.
So should someone be scared to ask those type of questions, or hesitant, or how would they get over that anxiousness possibly?
Absolutely not. Let's consider an analogy. Suppose you are dating someone. Well, there are certain important questions, such as, do you want to have children? Where do you want to live? What you don't want to do is wind up marrying this person and finding out you want to live in the Northeast and have 3 kids, and this person wants to live in the Southwest and not have kids.
Right.
That's going to be a major problem in your marriage. So you should talk about it before you get married. The same thing is true for these jobs. It's okay to ask, hey, what is the work-life balance here? Give me a sense of, when do people come in? How many hours a week do people work? I just want to make sure I have a sense of it. If you just say, oh, I don't want to work many hours, okay, that sounds lazy. But if you're just asking, I want to understand the culture, I've got a bunch of questions. First one, what's the work-life balance? Do people typically work at night or on weekends, or is it very much, after 6 they don't? Asking questions like this, phrasing them in certain ways is critical, but they are fine questions to ask. And I can tell you, as someone who hires people, I am explicit about that. I work for startup companies. We're not a 40-hour-a-week job, and I'm upfront, because if I hire someone who wants a 40-hour-a-week job, this person is going to leave in 2 months. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help the candidate. So let's be honest about it ahead of time. I think better companies will have no problem being upfront about it. Okay, good. I think I find just in my travels, a lot of people are nervous in asking those type of questions. And I just wasn't sure why, but I thank you very much for that information, and hoping that influences other individuals to say, hey, you know what, you can go and ask these questions, especially if this is something that you really want to do for the next 4 or 5 years, more especially. And here's a way you can say it. Say, I listened to this amazing podcast, the That Will Never Work podcast, and there was this guy, Mark Herschberg, and he said, we should be asking these questions during interviews. So I started asking it during my interview process. So let me just go through a couple questions he recommended. Because now you're putting the responsibility on me, on this other guy, on this expert. And so it doesn't feel like you're doing it. It feels like you were recommended to do this. Nice. I like that. I like that approach, because then maybe that will take away some of that anxiousness. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. So in reference to when people are looking for their next step, because we're noticing that there's a lot of empty spaces in the corporate world, if you will. People are leaving their jobs, looking for something else, looking for something more meaningful right now. The request that I'm coming across a lot, which is actually on one of your questions on the career plan questions, is how much community impact should my job include? That's one of the questions, but how do you recommend for people to look at that type of impactful job? Are you finding people that's looking for something like that it really impacts the community, or are you looking for, or are you finding people that are not looking for that so much? What's your
what's your thoughts on the community impact?
It's, of course, a personal choice, although I think we're seeing generationally, the younger generations are a little more concerned with mission and impact. So there are people who just say, I want money, or I want to do this type of work. Maybe I love making video games. Great. It's not necessarily helping the world,
right?
Not hurting the world.
Right.
And that's what they want to do. And that is totally fine. Don't feel you have to have community impact. But then there are people like the student of mine I mentioned earlier who said, no, I want to have an impact, and originally thought, well, I have to get this through my job. I'll give you another example. I met someone years ago. He said, I could have gone on and been a research scientist and tried to cure cancer, but honestly, I would have been a pretty mediocre scientist. But I realized I was a very good sales guy. So the way I can create impact is going and being a sales guy and making a lot of money and then donating some of that money to hire someone who would be a much better researcher than I would be. He wants to have impact. He does. He just does it in an indirect way. So it's not through his job directly, but through what his job gives him that he can do that. So there's many approaches if you want to have impact. Some people say, I want to work specifically for an organization. I can tell you right now, I've done things like ad tech in the past. I am tired of ad tech. I don't feel like I am making the world better with ad tech.
Okay.
My next job, I want to make sure I'm doing something that makes the world better in some way.
And I think your resources that you have on your website are helping individuals to get over some of these roadblocks that we're experiencing. Listen, Mark, can you just let everyone know where they can find this stuff, find these resources, your book and everything? So I know I keep referencing it. Can you just let them know where they can find you?
Sure. Okay, you've listened long enough. Here is the website, thecareertoolkitbook.com, and it has on not only information about the book and how to get in touch with me, and there's new content every week on the blog. There's also that resources page where we list the career questions we've been talking about, some free downloads, some links to other online free resources. There's links to the free app you can download. So all of this is at thecareertoolkitbook.com. But don't stop listening because we've got more good advice for you.
Right. Right. Well, I think that it's information that, as one of your quotes says, you can master these vital skills. How much time do you think it would take an individual that's a little more apprehensive or a little more timid, maybe introverted, to excel a little bit in these spaces where they're weak?
Certainly, we know that you can spend a lifetime learning to master these skills.
Right.
But the great thing is you can have amazing impact very quickly. Let me give you an analogy, and then I'll give you an example. We're going to do a little math.
Okay.
And this is how I open the book in the first chapter. I want you to imagine you've got a rectangle that's 4 by 10.
Okay.
And you have to increase one of the sides by 2 units to maximize the area. We all remember these problems back in middle school.
Right.
If you need a second, you can pause the podcast. Okay, now the answer is you go from 4 to 6. 6 times 10, 60 units. Okay, great. What does this have to do with anything we're talking about? Well, let's think about conceptually. When you add 2 units to that short side, those 2 units are amplified by that long side. If you put the 2 units on the long side, go from 10 to 12, they're only amplified by the 4. You only get 4 times 2 more. All of us have short sides and long sides.
Right.
Me, my long side, technology. That's what I do. I'm a CTO. I do have to keep up with that long side. If I'm not paying attention to new technologies, I become a dinosaur. We all have to pay some attention to our long side.
Right.
But for every unit of time we put in, we're going to get a bigger impact on these short sides. And by the way, we have more than 2 sides. That might be networking, leading, communicating, negotiating. Any of these short sides, just getting a little bit better. It's almost like if you have to do a talk and you do 0 preparation, it's probably not going to go well. If you only do 1 or 2 practice rounds, okay, it's better than if you did none. It's significantly better. if you're doing it 20 times, you're going to get really good at.
Right.
But even those first 1 or 2 times, you get so much better. I had a student, we were teaching networking in my class at MIT. And in the course of a few hours, she went from someone who feared networking, who hated it, who didn't understand it, to she got it. And I remember at the end of our networking session, we had people coming in, we had a networking event. As we're wrapping up, she said, I don't want this to stop. I love it. This is so great. And forevermore, she now sought out networking opportunities and created new network connections that she wouldn't have been able to do just a few hours before.
Wow. That's powerful, Mark. That's really powerful. I appreciate that information. I hope that your listeners, I hope you're listening, understand that, hey, you can overcome whatever it is. Sometimes you just need to get over the hump, and you probably will understand it. You probably enjoy it more than you thought you did before you tried. I think a lot of us were too scared. I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
And these skills, by the way, we think about people who might be natural leaders, natural communicators, natural networkers. Yeah, they are out there. There's also natural golf players or people who are naturally good at math. But that doesn't mean the rest of us can't get good at. And just like you can learn golf or you can learn math if you put the time in, you can learn to be a leader, learn to be a networker, learn to be a great communicator. And in fact, those of us who put the time into work, by the way, I'm an introvert, so not all of this was natural for me. If you put the time in, you often do better than someone who is naturally good and said, well, I'm good enough, and doesn't make any effort. So putting in that effort, putting in that training, just like for anything else, you can become fantastic in any and all of these skills.
Mark, I appreciate you today. I really do. And I hope our listeners do today also. We thank you for your time, man. We thank you for this information. We thank you for the resources. Do you want to tell the people once again where they can find you, and not just from the website, but any social media outlets you'd like for them to follow you on and listen to you?
The website is thecareertoolkitbook.com. And if you go to the contact page, you can find me on all the different major places where you would find someone. So I'm on LinkedIn under Hershey. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I've got different names on each one because I couldn't get the same name. So if you go to the contact page, you can then go to each one. But again, that website, we've got the free resources. We've got the free app. We've got blog content. There's always lots of great content at thecareertoolkitbook.com. Mark,
thank you very much. Well, I do have one more question before you leave. And I ask every guest this. It's my Would You Rather segment, right? And so today, would you rather face a fork in the road or be forced to pick between 3 doors?
So this is tough because I'm the type of guy, when I see a fork in the road, I take it. Both of them. I hate having to limit myself to one thing. It's why I had multiple degrees from my university. I have multiple hobbies. I suppose between the two, even though the fork only gives me 2 choices and the doors give me 3, I feel like with a fork, I could at least look down the road a little ways and start to have a sense of what might be down each path. The doors feel like I can't tell what's behind the door. So I'm going to choose the having to pick from a fork in the path.
Wow. I'm going to tell you, Mark, that a lot of my guests, when I ask this question, most of them pick the fork in the road because they feel like it's a more immediate decision. They think that having too many options would throw them off.
I'd rather have 3 forks to choose from than 2 if you give me that option.
Right.
I like having options, but I also like being able to understand those options.
Right. Cool. I thank you very much, Mark. I would love to have you on again. And check him out on LinkedIn, everyone. We thank you all very much for tuning in. And Mark, take care, man.
Thank you.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.
Woodhouse Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram is bringing you more power, capability, and savings with the full lineup of new Ram trucks during the Black Friday sales event going on all month long. Lease a 2024 Ram 1500 Crew Cab Bighorn for $429 per month. Visit our 2 convenient metro locations in Blair or Bellevue or online anytime. Lease for 42 months, 10,000 miles per year with approved credit. Tax, title, license extra. $2,500 down plus first payment and $299 doc fee to its signing. Example stock number BC230242. Offer expires 11/30/2023. See dealer for details.
Every day, my company gets scam phishing emails trying to get money or sensitive info. I wanted to protect my employees and my clients, so I checked out CISA's Secure Our World. They've got simple ways we can protect our businesses from online threats. First, teach employees to recognize and report phishing. Next, require strong passwords plus multi-factor authentication. And finally, turn on automatic updates for your business software. To learn more, go to CISA at cisa.gov/Secure Our World.